Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Greg Darrow. I think some of you have met me before, and sure recognize a lot of the names of the folks that are here. So, welcome. A little bit about me. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for CPAT for the last 8 years. And I have many years in flight operations training and pilot training, as well as being a commercial airline pilot. So, what kind of lived in your world and know some of the challenges that you face in training daily. Um, as we go through today, I want to respect our time. I know everybody's super busy, so we're gonna go through this, and I'll talk about the agenda, but we will try to make sure we're done right on time or a little bit before, so that we can make sure we get you back to what you need to work on. A little bit of overview of what we're gonna do. So. In today's agenda, we'll give you an overview of CPAT as a company and what we do, just a brief review. We'll talk about examples of negative training and how they affect your training outcomes. They reduce safety and how they increase costs. How some of the advanced learning tools that CPAT has developed and some of the best practices we've seen help us avoid those negative training situations. And then I'll kind of present it in three different scenarios. One, which is a scenario where I have an aircraft systems course that just doesn't match my fleet. Scenario two, a general subjects course or a general operations course that isn't regulatory compliant. And scenario three will be a procedural training course that doesn't reflect our current SOPs. Yeah, I know we know every one of these causes us problems and can cause negative training outcomes. We'll finish up by question and answers, but I want to remind you throughout this, we're going to do it a little different than we've done in the past. We actually invite you to interrupt me, ask questions, tell me how your situation is affected in regards to some of the subjects that we're talking about today. Okay. And when you raise your hand, Amy will be the person to kind of interrupt me and stop me, and we'll get going there. So, but again, the goal is to have an exchange of ideas and a conversation here. So please, at any time, interrupt me. So a little bit about CPAT for those of you who don't know us. CPAT is by far the world's largest and oldest provider of digital distance learning content or digital learning content to the airline industry. We have over 300 clients around the world that utilize our material for pilot training, flight attendant training, maintenance training, and dispatcher training. We organize what we do into four main pillars, and those pillars are CPAT Access. That's where it's our delivery platform, our proprietary learning management system, mobile application, student biometric verification system, and an API that connects with everybody else out there. CPAT Instruct, this is where all of our courseware lives, and that's aircraft system courses for just about every single transport category aircraft that's out there in the airline industry. General subjects, a robust library of general subjects, interactive diagrams. Those are interactive systems that allow you to interact with the control panel in the airplane, the synoptic on the airplane cockpit, as well as the academic diagram. And then our procedures training suite for FMS training, cockpit flows and checklist training, as well as walk-around training. And then we're going to look at today some of the advanced features of Invent and how they prevent negative training. But Invent is our content design software program that is by far unique in this industry. And I think you'll be really amazed at some of the stuff it does. And the last pillar that we work with is CPAT Assist. And this is something CPAT is very well known for, is our customer service and 24/7 support for every single student. So we never have a student that says, I couldn't log in last night because I couldn't get any help. We make sure that everybody is taken care of. So as I mentioned, we'll start with CPAT Invent. And we're going to take a look at using this tool as an advanced learning solution to avoid negative training. So let's look at some of what the causes and solutions that we have for negative training. And so why do we have negative training in our courses and how do we fix them? Well, if we think about it, as we migrated over the last 20 years from, chalk and talk in the classrooms where, we had an instructor manual that said, okay, on this day, I'm supposed to teach these subjects, and I'm going to go out and teach it in the classroom, and everybody's going to sit there and basically until, the mid 90s, even PowerPoint wasn't available to us. And so I'm kind of dating myself to tell you I was pre-PowerPoint when I started instructing in the 737. So, but so some of the causes of negative training and some of the issues we fight with are static courseware. That's courseware that we can't change. That may have come from a third-party vendor, like this example, or it could have been from somebody that developed it in our company and they've either left or changed departments, and we don't have those source files. So we're stuck with this course that is as it is, right? And so we're, and it could take, when it comes to a third-party vendor, it can, if I request a change to my provider, it could cost me a lot of money and it could take months to complete when I need this to be accurate today. So when we look at it, we felt that the best solution to fix this, of course, is to empower the airline itself to make changes to any third-party developed courseware and maintain version control as it's being changed, right? And this is the feedback that we've received over the last, again, CPATs have been around since 1994. So, and everybody's always said, why can't I just make a quick change here? And that's what we think is the solution for that static courseware problem. Another idea is that, maybe the courseware is out of date, and it may be something I can change, but it's not easy for me to change. I got to go find the master file and I got to upload. I got to make the changes there, and then I got to figure out how to upload it to my LMS and then distribute it. So, having courseware that is not current to regulation or current to company policies, reduces safety and, of course, challenges to our compliance to our operating rules. What's the solution? Again, allow real-time updating to those courses inside the system. And so I don't have to chase these master files or these previous, versions of PowerPoint and, whatever I published in, and then have the right to publish it right into the delivery system or the LMS. Right now, once it's been QA'd or followed my internal process. And so we'll look at some solutions with that. And then one of the things that's close to me as an instructor and examiner was, when we'd introduce a procedural training tool, maybe an FMS trainer or a cockpit flow trainer. And, in those days we were doing it, or many times we're doing it in a PowerPoint situation or or some sort of software that is graphical. But if I put that out and it's not current, meaning it's got the SOPs from the last vendor or from the last update, and I have a new SOP, maybe let's say on the after-start checklist, like what we're going to look at today, that can cause problems when it gets out to the line, or or earlier than that, even in simulator world, right? So an example would be, there's a lot of OEM procedural courseware that's out there, and when it's presented to the, when it comes from the OEM to the airline, it's the way the OEM designed it, not the way the airline is flying it. So, we end up teaching around that when we're teaching, things like checklistology or, flows and SOPs. So the only way to make that work is to give the power to provide software that allows the training department to update procedures, flows, and checklists right now. And so that I don't have a single student getting trained to the wrong procedures, right? But all of these are negative training challenges that could create negative outcomes. So we talked about aircraft system courses that don't reflect our current fleet configurations. Well, the potential negative outcomes are, we have people failing their ground school exams, and then we got to send them back through remedial training. There's wasted training time in systems integration training or fixed base simulators, and these are limited resources that we just can't waste, right? For general operating subjects that are not accurate to company policies or aviation regulations, imagine if we had operating into an environment where there's an update to regulations, and the pilots were using a course, whether in initial or recurrent, that wasn't current to that current regulation. Now we're putting ourselves up for violations or fines, and of course, the most important one, we've reduced our safety margins. So we don't want to have any of those challenges. And we talked about SOPs, the negative outcomes that could come from having non-current SOPs being taught, at the academic level prior to simulators, is we're wasting simulator time and instructor time to clean that up in simulator world. And, that could be very costly. Again, it reduces safety margins and it disrupts pilot and company efficiencies. If I'm putting guys out on the line that are not versed in SOPs, then there's a disruption in the continuity of how we're operating our airplanes. And so, for us, what do all these have in common? Wasted time, wasted resources, and hate to say it, but it's important. But money challenges. We're spending money that doesn't have to be spent, and we all know how important it is to be frugal and be within budget. All of this impacts safety and training outcomes, and we just that's the challenge. All of these things came from clients and my experience, as well as clients' experience, of what they're challenging, what they're fighting with. And so we created CPAT Invent to help overcome some of these. And I'm going to show you some of those examples. And so let's take a look here at the first scenario that we're looking at. And so and that would be an aircraft systems course or aircraft systems training course that is inaccurate or doesn't match our fleet standardization. So as part of our discussion today, I know that I've experienced times when I've been checking out in an airplane or doing a type rating course or an initial course, and the course itself doesn't match the courses of the fleet that we're flying. Has anybody else run into that, or is there any situations that we have that anybody would like to volunteer to give me an example of how an inaccurate system course has caused you problems? All right, I do have one. So I've got a comment from some people are shy, don't want to talk on the mic, so I completely understand that. But so let's answer this live. So it says that we use a generic Whitetail 737 NG system course that causes a lot of confusion, especially with our new hires, because it doesn't match our aircraft. What do you suggest is the solution? Well, so let's talk about that. And this is very common, right? Whether you're using OEM software or third-party software, very few airlines actually build their aircraft system courses. It's a lot of time and effort, and it's a big effort to maintain currency in that. And so at CPAT, when we provide our courseware to our clients, we provide it in a tailored format. We call it enhanced tailoring. And that's a lot more than just the basics. We do enhance, we do tailor to match the aircraft variant. So if it's an NG, it's a 737-800, if that's the variant. The proper engines, of course, the big items, and the proper weight measurements that are in it, whether it's metric or imperial. But that being said, that's where most vendors stop, right? And that's where most configurations, even at the OEM level that are delivered to clients, that's as tailored as it gets. CPAT continues on. We take your FCOMs and we spend about 8 weeks going through the FCOMs, and we update the 65 main systems that are in there. That could be as much as the changing, making sure the radio head panels are correct to your aircraft, making sure the radars are correct, making sure that the EFIS descriptions are correct, so that when it arrives at your location, it should be very accurate. But as we mentioned, now what happens if I have something as small as, in this example that I'm going to use, is I've got a max takeoff weight that has changed. Do I have to go back to CPAT to make that change? I just want to change the numbers, and it's critical because especially if the max takeoff weight went down, I could have guys violating FARs or regulations doing a takeoff overweight. So that would be an example of where we want to empower control of the courseware at the airline level. From my experience, I had a generic course taught to me when I checked out in the 777. It was an OEM course, and of course, the OEM had every single variant in the 777 that you can have. They had a panel on the overhead that was an additional flight control monitoring panel. I don't really remember the whole function of it. I do remember I studied it quite a bit. And when I got into simulator world the first time and started doing my familiarization of the cockpit, I couldn't find that panel. And it drove me crazy for a couple of days. So I talked to my instructor and he goes, "Oh, we don't have that variant." And so that's an example of how this can be an issue. We do have another question, and that is from a friend of ours here, a current client. He says, we have 6 Boeing 747-400s in our fleet, freighters. Each is different, where there is 4 different transponder heads. Some switches are on up and on down. And he uses Invent. He uses this program to customize the differences in showing and using their own photos and their own descriptions from the manuals. So that's a great example of empowering your team, especially in that situation where you have multiple variants. I like that very much, and I appreciate Mr. Stephen Gatling for throwing that question at me. So, but in this scenario, I'm gonna be much simpler than Steve. I'm going to use the CRJ 900 course that is one of our Invent courses to show how something as simple as a max takeoff weight change can be done very quickly. And now I have a valid course, instead of having to wait weeks and pay money to a vendor to make a change to that so that I can have a current accuracy. So let me jump on over to the CPAT LMS here. And so I'm in the Discovery LMS today, and I've got myself assigned for the CRJ course. If I start here, and I apologize, I'm going to stop sharing for a second because I did this before. Operator error, I forgot to turn on the sound. I'll share again. Everybody should see my screen. And under Aircraft General, I'll go to Aircraft Introduction, and I will demonstrate this for us here. Let me move the control bar out of the way. We'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to start from the beginning. I'm going to push through some of these slides to get to the slide that we want to modify here. And as a manager of training, I can put myself into review mode and go there. And so I just need to make sure I log in.
The CRJ is a short to medium. The following of the CRJ 900 has 4 categories of structural weight limitations. Select each category to view them.
So here is the situation. We've got, let's say today, we've got the aircrafts were weighed. The new weight standard for max takeoff for our fleet is going to be 83,500. So 1,000 pounds less. That's the more dangerous of the two, right? If I had it being higher, a guy thinks that this is max, he could cost us money because we're not able to upload enough, all the weight, the passengers and cargo, because he thinks we're below that, we have a lower one. But in this situation, I'm going to actually lower the max takeoff weight. And if our students are seeing this and then being told later, hey, disregard that, it's actually 83,500, think about the problems and negative outcomes that could have. So I'm going to go ahead as an administrator. I'm going to jump on over to the admin panel, and I'm going to use CPAT Invent to make a change to that course. So I went into the admin panel, found the lessons tab, and I'm going to go ahead and go down and find the, it helps if I start at the top. I'm going to go down and find the CRJ General, Aircraft General Introduction lesson. That's this one. You can search this by a name, of course, by a manufacturer of aircraft, by the models. I'm just doing it quickly so that we can use this example. And in here, I can either create a new version of this, which would have version control, and it would be I'll have the original course, and then the next version, the next version, the next version. So I have track changes and I know what I'm doing. Or I can duplicate the lesson. An example, if I had a course where I'm doing an airport briefing for Atlanta as a specialty airport, and had all that, but then I wanted to do another one for, let's say, JFK. I could duplicate the lesson, not have any track changes or not have any history to it. In this situation today, because I don't want to mess around with the courses, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate the lesson, and I'm going to say yes. And that way I can get to the lesson I can put it in the in development folder, and I can now go make changes to it. So I'm going to go ahead and edit this course. And again, this is a CPAT created course that our clients are authorized to modify. Let me just say all the things you can modify. You can modify the images, the text, the voices, the slides. You can delete slides, you can add slides, you can repeat, you can replace slides at any time. So in this situation, I'm going to go ahead and go back down, and I'm going to find structural weight limitations. Here we go. This was the slide we were looking at, and we said we're making a change to the weight. I'm going to go ahead and change it to 83,500. I'm going to guess on kilos, because I apologize, I didn't look it up, but I'm going to say that that's the right number. But now I've made that change. I can save it. I can preview it now to make sure it does what I want it to do. I'm going to go ahead and preview the page. And now when I go in here,
the CRJ 900 has 4 categories of structural weight limitations. Select each category to view them.
And now I can see that I've updated my max takeoff weight. When I agree that this is correct and I follow company policies for updating courseware and information, whatever the QA process is at your airline, once that's done, you can publish this and it will update every student that has this course, and any new students assigned will get the correct material. So a very, very, very powerful tool that avoids that negative training of trying to teach around something as important as an inaccurate max takeoff weight. So that's the first example. I do have let me get rid of that real quick. So does anybody have any comments or questions about this? This was a very fast example of how I can update my aircraft system courseware. And again, you can change just about anything in here. The images, the text, the narration, the audio, every single thing can be changed here. And so one of the things I want to make sure also, when I say you can change the images, let's just take a look at that. When I say you can change the images, the airline has access to every single image that CPAT has in its image library. That is aircraft systems, general subjects, a basic aviation. In this example here, there's 1,736 pages of imagery, and it's all organized by aircraft fleet. You can filter it by aircraft model, by variant. You can keyword search it, and so I can do whatever I want to access that material. So that's a very powerful tool for you to use when you're making updates. Like an example we had earlier, some of our panels don't look the same. Well, CPAT has tailored the course, but you may get an off airplane that doesn't match your fleet. Well, you could, search this imagery and see if that image is already there. If not, you can do what a lot of our clients do. You can upload your own images, maybe take a picture of your aircraft or your simulator or any kind of environment you want. You can upload images, you can upload videos, you can upload PDFs as well as animations. So a very good way to make sure that you're updating your materials there. All right.
Greg, we did have a question that just came through on the chat. And that question or comment is talking about, is it possible to have the logs of the current update in the course and the version as a table of current revision in case of the one audit?
Yeah, so So good question. So there are a couple of ways that we can do that. There is a change log or a log of changes that are made. There is a version that is assigned to the course itself so that you know the what version we're having. So if you're going through an IOSA audit or any kind of an audit, a flight operations audit, you'll be able to track that. There are other ways to do it, and during our onboarding with the company, they'll brief you on every way to make sure that we're monitoring which version we have and how we're doing version control. But we know how important that is, and I hope I answered that question for you. So if you have more follow up on that, either just submit another question, or you can just let us know, and I'll make sure I follow up in detail with you on that one. So. All right, well, let me jump over here to the, I'm going to jump over here to the, back to the presentation, and let me go here, and let me go here. And so let's look at another scenario. And so in, in scenario two, this is something that actually probably changes a lot more than your aircraft systems courses, right? Aircraft system courses, like we had mentioned from one of our clients, is that, well, I get a different, we don't have a pure standardized fleet. And as airplanes come in, maybe I need to make a change then. But if I have one fleet, let's say a 737 MAX fleet, and they're all the same and they're all brand new airplanes, they're probably going to match, and they're probably not going to be a lot of changes to your aircraft system courses. But I will tell you, general subjects and regulatory courses change all the time. And that could be, I used to think it was mostly things like, a regulation like a NAT-HLA or an RVSM course that would have a lot of regular changes. But we've seen things that are even, aeronautical theory have a lot of changes recently. Example would be, we used to do upset recovery training, aircraft upset training. Now it's a very defined UPRT course that both EASA and FAA have updated that theory on that. ALAR courses, right? Those are always updated. So, but it could, if I've got a course library of general subjects, whether those are things that I created in some development program, such as a PowerPoint or an articulator or a storyline, or I purchased it from a company like CPAT, so I have a whole library of courses, I can't have those be non-current. They have to be current because it's critical to the safety of our airline. Has anybody had any examples of where they have, and I've seen some of these courses change multiple times in 1 year, right? And so has anybody had any of those challenges like I've seen? So if you do, just send me a question here. But in my experience, I want to give you an example of a recent client situation that they had. And they fly airplanes all around the world as a supplemental carrier. They're part of an OEM, and they require specialty airport briefings to their ferry and flight test pilots. And those briefings cover not only the airport general familiarization, but also the regulatory information under that country's regulatory authorities. As well as, operational things, who's the operational contact there? Where did we park the airplanes? All of that stuff. And so, and then they have multiple of those across all the airplanes in the world, or all the places they fly in the world. Well, you imagine if they couldn't change those, or they found that they were, not current. Well, you're flying to, La Paz, Bolivia, you sure want that thing to be current with, any kind of information. Now, I'm not saying you update it to the level of NOTAMs, but you do update to a level of, airport familiarization, what runway is the preferred runway, and all of that stuff. And so they were having challenges before using Invent where they were not be able to get this done timely and then published and out to their people, right? So in this example, let's use let me use our global reporting format course, right? Example of a new regulatory course on runway assessments. And so the GRF course, I'm going to use something as simple as I'll update the initial description of what is a GRF course, but I just wanted to show you how quickly we can make this change. So I'm going to go ahead and go here, and I'll go on back on into the LMS. I'm going to find that general subjects course, and we can look at what this course looks like real quick, and I'll go continue anyways. Just a note for everybody that is with our airlines. I know most of you know this because you're clients of ours, but everything we do is branded to your livery logos and look and feel, and that's more important than just wanting to have pretty colors and and our airline logos on it. It's so that students buy into the fact that this course is customized for us. It reflects our training environment versus a generic course that was just bought off the street, and so let me go on in here. I'm going to go to
Global Reporting Format, or GRF, was created to provide a common method and standardized language for
So something as simple as this. There's an introduction slide here with some information that introduces the course. I'm going to make a change to that, but I could make a change to anything. I could make a change to the objectives of the lesson. I can make changes to the slides themselves. I can add, delete, change imagery. But in this situation, let me go ahead and jump on over to the admin panel. And again, I will find that course under lessons, and I will go invent lessons, and I'll find the GRF course. And I'll show you how we're going to change not only the text narration, but we're going to change the voice narration, and we're going to do that very quickly here. So let me find that. So Global Reporting GRF Introduction course, that's the course. And again, I'm going to duplicate the lesson. I'm going to hit yes, and then I will find it in development folder here. And it's going to take a second for it to get there. And let me just see if I moved a little too quick for it. There it is. And then I'm going to go ahead and make a change. So I've opened up the lesson. Again, I know of no other third-party provider or developer of courseware that allows modification down to the slide level. But this is, to me, when I was developing courseware in my life, this would have been invaluable for me. I actually saved a narration that I wrote about, to replace the narration I had there so that we can save a little time here. So I'm going to go ahead and go down here to that introduction slide. This was the slide we were looking at. This was the narration we had. And so I'm going to go ahead and replace that. So I've updated my course. Now, this could be anything. This could be, a regulation has changed, which is critical, right? I'm going to go ahead and delete the previous narration so that it is gone. And I'm going to go ahead and re-narrate this with the new text-to-speech. And I will go save that. Now, actually, I'm going to do something really fancy here. Some of our clients would be using this for beyond flight ops, where there may be a need for a non-English situation, or maybe English as a second language, you'd want to have the backup to a native tongue. But an example was, we have a client that has a lot of contractors around the world taking care of their airplanes, and they're required to have training every year. Well, the training course is built in English, but they can add an alternative text to this. So we're going to go ahead and add an alternative text. And we're going to say here, add alternative text. I'm going to go ahead and I'll say, let's do this one in Spanish. I'm going to go ahead and come down here. I'm going to say Spanish. I'm going to translate that. Now the text has been translated into Spanish. I'm going to save the alternative. I'm going to go to 2. Now I'm going to narrate that. And I'm going to go text to speech. I'm going to use I'll use Tomas as my speaker. I can select different dialects of Spanish if I want. And in this case, I'll use, let's use Colombia. There we go. And we'll hit save that. Now I can go ahead and I've made all those changes. I've changed the then the narration, the text, I can change the images, I can change anything I want. I'm going to go ahead and save the lesson. And I need to tell it what my alternative language is. Let me do that real quick. And I'm going to go Spanish. And I'm going to hit save. And now I can preview this. And so let's go take a look at what that looked like. It's putting it all together for me at the moment. Now I'm going to go ahead and
the Global Reporting Format, GRF, is a globally harmonized methodology for assessing and reporting runway surface conditions. The GRF was developed by the International
So I've made the change. I've narrated the change. Let's take a look at that in Spanish real quick. So that's
el Global Reporting Format, GRF, es una metodología armonizada a nivel mundial para evaluar e informar sobre las condiciones de la superficie de la pista. El GRF fue desarrollado por la...
So again, keeping things, especially regulatory or company compliance courses, are very, very important. And so I've got a question from Phil. All of these edits and admin panels are available through web browser, correct? And that is correct. It can't be done offline just because the items are, it's a very complex software program, but yeah, it is done through the web. And so it's done online and you can do it anywhere that you have access to a browser. So again, highly functionable. Hopefully I answered your question, Phil. And if you have more, just let me know. So that's a very powerful tool for making sure I'm keeping my general subjects courses current. All right, let me jump over to one more scenario here, and then we'll see if there's any other questions that I can answer. I'm going to go here and go back to my presentation. And there we go. So scenario 3 that has affected me in my training life, and that is when we're training procedures. Nowadays there's fancy, software programs that can train procedures for FMS training, for cockpit flow trainings and checklist trainings, or walk around trainings. Whereas in the old days, I was part of this, right? We had a flow chart that we handed our students. They sat in the paper trainer, they did the flow. If there was a change to the flows or the checklist, we just gave them a new piece of paper and then we worked with them on learning that. But now we do so much of this learning, in distance learning, and we prep these flows in a 3-dimensional or iPad, environment that it's harder to make those changes. And in my situation, I've had a couple of negative training situations with this. One, at my airline, I flew Boeings for 28 years before going to the Airbus. And so I'm still a little confused. I love the Airbus, but it's still confusing to me. But when we went there, we had a flow program that would teach us, okay, step 1 is this panel, and this is what you're supposed to do on it. Step 2 is this panel, but it was not accurate to our airline's SOPs. And at the end of that, let's say pre-start checklist and flow and checklist, we had, I'm not kidding you, electronic Post-it notes that said, well, this is correct, but in our airline, we do it this way. And in the heat of battle, you'll only remember the first thing you learned, right? And I see that when I'm flying and I have brand new first officers that have used out-of-date flows and call outs. And that, you know how disruptive that is to your cockpit standardization. And so here I do have one question or one comment. So one of our attendees says, well, we always try to match OEM flows, but of course, certain company procedures have to also be used. Our training program is created by the OEM, but we have a lot of issues trying to get our pilots to use the airline standardized flows also. And so that's exactly what I'm talking about right now, which is that if I'm not empowered to keep that SOP or flow or procedural training current, then it's actually it could cause very great negative impacts. And so let's let's take a look at how we can do that and make sure, I just want to make sure I'm respecting everybody's time here and show you how to make the change. So in this situation, I got a 737 first officer's after start flow that's out of date and needs to be updated. I'm going to do something simple. The OEM checklist has us saying that in the after start flow, we're not going to just turn the APU off. We're going to ask the captain to confirm whether we leave it on or off. That's probably proper, of course, because we might use a bleeds on takeoff or a bleeds off takeoff and we need the APU. But in this situation, I'm going to say that the standardization is to shut the APU off. So I'm going to update these first officers after start flow so that it says that. But let's take a look at what that flow looks like. And I'm going to go down here to perform mode, practice mode, demo mode. There we go. And I'm going to go to the after start flow. Continue anyways. And we'll take a look at what the student sees, and then we'll do a quick update on that. And so
after the engines have reached a stabilized idle.
So in this situation, I can see my flow diagram. I have access to a flow diagram over here. Again, these are changeable, and the administrator can modify this flow at any time. And so it's going to step me through step by step, step 1, step 2, step 3, and it's going to show me what I need to do, and then it's going to let me do it in a 3D environment. So I'm going to kind of move forward to step 4, which is the APU here. So first was the pitot heat, and then it'll have me do it. And so I would, actually have to find where the pitot heat is. And in demo mode, it's walking me through that. I'm going to turn those off, and then I'm going to go to the next step. This program, just so everybody's aware of it, for those of you who aren't using this program provides it in demonstration mode, where the program gives you instruction. It can also be given in practice mode, where the students can practice the flows, and if they make a mistake, they get a hint. And it can also be delivered in perform mode or test mode, so that as a training manager, I can say, I want to make sure this guy knows his flows before I set into simulator, and he can go through here and do these. And if he makes it through, I get a report that says that he completed that flow with no errors. If he has errors, up to a certain point, he will be acceptable. That's administrator defined, normally 1 or 2 errors. And if he makes an error, he'll fail that flow, and I'll get a report saying, okay, I need to sharpen this guy up. But again, if it's not current to our flows, that causes us problems. So let me go ahead and move on over. I'm going to move quickly on over to step 4, where we're going to turn that APU off. I probably should have checked step 1.
Next, set the APU switch as instructed by the captain.
So here it is, and it's going to move me to that next step where I'm going to have to make that change. But I'm going to jump over here. I'm going to find that lesson as we did before. And again, I can search it by Boeing. I can say 737, and I want invent only. Well, here we go. So now I'm in this. I see the 737 Max, FMS training. I want to look for the first officer's after start flow. And I had it here just a second ago. After start flow checklist, first officer. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate the lesson again, and I'll hit yes. And I'll go to the lesson. I'll go in development. And again, it takes a second for it to transfer on over. And so I'm just going to let it jump on over there in development. And there's my lesson. It's opening now. And so I can do something as simple. And again, for me, maybe my flow order changes, right? And so I can rearrange the order of the items or add items. And then I can also change that flow diagram that we were talking about so that it matches the steps. So if I wanted to move, let's say the pitot heat into a different location, I could just slide that up. But in this situation, I'm going to go to step 4, which is set the switch to off. I'm going to change the narration here. I'm going to just say, set the APU switch APU, set the APU switch to off. I'm just going to go like that. I'm going to make sure that that is in its right way. I'm going to re-narrate that. So that it's narrating the right one, text to speech. I'll select Guy, which is, we all, you have hundreds of voices you can choose from. We try to stay uniform to one, but it's really your choice. You can do different dialects, different things. But now I've updated that to where it says APU switch off. But now I can go down here and I can go to my 3-dimensional switch where I want to make sure that he knows in the 3-dimensional world, he's got to set the switch to off, right? And so I can do it there, but I can do it as quickly as we were just talking about when it comes to making those changes on the instructions and what their job is and what they have to do. All right, I've been moving very quickly, and I want to make sure I leave enough time for questions and answers here. And so, does anybody have questions in regards to these flow trainers and the trainers? And again, this is an FMS. This could be the FMS trainer where you're learning skills for your FMS. This could be your cockpit flows and checklists, and it could be your walk around. And so, but very, very strong tool to making sure that my current flows are set to follow along with the current SOPs
Next,
of the airline.
Perform the recall.
All right, let me jump back over here to our presentation, and there we go. And let me just open us up to some questions here. Let me make sure I got my little control there. So does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask at this point, or any comments to be made on how they've overcome some of these negative training challenges? It would be great to hear if anybody has been able to overcome out of date courseware, or has some other insights to how this has worked for them. All right. Well, the goal is to make sure that you have the support and information in regards to overcoming your challenges. Our goal at CPAT is not just to be a provider of courseware, but to be a partner in training, and that's why we offer these Discover webinars. And so at any point, here is my contact information. And so I wanted to make sure that everybody has a way to contact me. You can email me or phone me, and I'm on WhatsApp on that phone number. But I'd be happy at any time to answer questions or follow up with you on conversations. But I hope this brought value to you, and was a good use of your time. I know everybody's busy, but I look forward to working with all of you as the future goes on. And if there's anything that CPAT can do to be of service, please let us know. And have a wonderful day, and we'll see you really soon.